Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Damon Cook, a part-time sponsored contributor with my fellow contributors Nick Diego and Fabian Kägy and Ann McCarthy. Today, we're diving into some exciting features of the upcoming WordPress 6.5 release, publicly available March 26, 2024. Like all releases, WordPress 6.5 represents a vast effort of community and collaboration that propels the project forward. Many of these items we'll preview today represent countless hours of dialogue and planning. Some are just the beginning of foundational pieces. I'm going to go ahead and let Nick and Fabian introduce themselves. Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Damon. Hey, everybody. As Damon mentioned, my name is Nick Diego, and I am a full-time sponsored contributor working for Automattic, and I am primarily focused on developer advocacy and documentation within the WordPress project.
And I'm Fabian Kägy. I'm an associate director of editorial engineering at 10up, and I'm part of the editor triage team, kind of one of the editor triage leads of WordPress 6.5.
Fantastic to have you both here. As we delve into WordPress 6.5, it's crucial to approach our discussions with a balanced perspective. While each update brings valuable improvements and features, our aim isn't to set unrealistic expectations. Nick, considering this, what updates in 6.5 do you believe offer practical enhancements for the WordPress community, particularly developers and extenders?
Yeah, so lots coming in 6.5, but I kind of pinpoint a personal favorite, and that is the improvements in extensibility for the navigation block. The navigation block's been around for a long time in WordPress, but you could never really add your own custom blocks to it. And now you can. It seems very minor, but it kind of unlocks a bunch of stuff. You could do custom blocks that introduce mega menus, as I've experimented myself, or shopping cart buttons, that sort of thing. So very minor thing, but I think it will really unlock a lot of things for developers. The next thing is, and as we're going to see today in this discussion, is the block bindings API, the interactivity API, and also one of my favorites, block hooks, got a big improvement. It was introduced in 6.4, but we see a lot more functionality coming in 6.5. So a lot of things to get excited about.
And Fabian, with your agency lens, which aspects of this release do you find offer tangible benefits for content creators and site builders without overstating the roadmap ahead?
Yeah, I think Nick has already covered a bunch of the things. Of course, I'm super excited about the block bindings, the interactivity API, those features. But a small little update that I don't think has received a lot of attention yet that I'm really, really excited about is that there is a bunch of underlying unification that happened between the site editor and the post editor that now, for example, allows you to preview the full template in any post or page or custom post type that you're editing, which, especially when you're working on big, complex sites that have hugely complicated template, make it so much nicer and so much more visual to actually edit your content right in line in the post editor. And I think that is going to be a big improvement on top of all the other great things that Nick has already mentioned.
Thank you both. Now let's shift our focus to one of the highlights of WordPress 6.5, the data views features. We have a special demo video prepared by Ann McCarthy, product wrangler at Automattic, showcasing how data views are establishing new workflows and scaffolding the foundation for the long road ahead in the WordPress admin redesign. Let's take a look.
Howdy, my name is Ann McCarthy. I'm a product wrangler working for Automattic, and I'm on the WordPress 6.5 release squad. I'm here to talk about some new powerful views that are coming to the site editor in WordPress 6.5, which is set to be released on March 26, 2024. These views, as you'll soon see, showcase an early look at overlapping work around two Phase 3 efforts, the WP admin redesign and workflows. At a high level, this work makes exploring and filtering various pieces of content from patterns to pages as easy or complex as you want it to be. Basically, it gives you control and flexibility. Let's take a look. We're going to go through each section that's stabilized for this release. You'll notice some similarities between them. To start, we're going to go into templates, and we're going to select Manage All Templates to get this new view. Here we have it. So you'll see this is the table view. I can then go in and change what I want to show or hide. So for example, I can include a preview, which is pretty nifty. I can also go in and hide a bunch of stuff. So let's say I want it really pared down. I just want to see the template names, whether there's some revisions, resets, delete, all that good stuff. I can also change how many are shown per page. I can also change what I want to sort by, ascending, descending, all that good stuff. Same with author. I can also change the layout. So this is one of my favorite things. I really like seeing the different layouts. And again, I can change what's shown in terms of descriptions. So let's say I turn off descriptions and I want to show authors. I can do that as well. There's also the ability to bulk edit. So you'll see these bulk edit items here. I can select all, reset, delete, and this shows how many I can actually reset, how many I can delete. I can deselect them. I can then search here for whatever I want to find. So in this case, I have a custom one called Color Forward. I can start typing. You'll see it appear here. I can reset that. I can then add in additional filters. Right now, this is pretty simple. So we have things that are provided by the theme and then by my account, my admin account. So you can see here. This then shows how you can bulk select here. So I can edit 3 items, delete all 3 of these, or keep them as is. I can also go through and see at a glance some default looking filters. So this sets, using what's called like a primary filter API, a default filter that you can view. Now in the future, and this is where we get into workflows and phase 3, you can imagine creating your own view, and this being really helpful in templates or patterns or pages. Let's say you have a bunch of pages you want to review or posts you want to review. You could go in and add your own filter here. That is not a part of 6.5, but I did just want to mention it. So in different sections, you'll see these default options listed. Now let's go back and we're going to go into patterns. You'll see patterns has the same experience. At default, you can once more sort by different items. So ascending, descending, and see a change. This automatically defaults to the grid view. You can see sync status, displayed or not displayed. Same with items per page. You can change this around and you'll see a nice little pagination at the bottom. Similar to before, there is a default filter added in, so you can have synced or not synced and see these at a glance. This is to help with compatibility for what was available in the last release of WordPress, showing this. So let's reset these. You can also, as before, search as you'd like here, and there are options to bulk select, specifically when you're on your own patterns that you can bulk select and delete. Next up, we're just going to manage all template parts. So once more, similar layout as before. You can change to grid, change back to table, show different items. I'm not going to go super in detail here as it matches the experience as before with templates. Finally, last up, we have pages. So again, you'll go to manage all pages and you'll be presented with this section. So once more, you can show different views. You can bulk edit things. You can select them with these checkboxes. Pretty nifty. Same with fields. You'll see a date field as well. So let's have all those shown. We'll do sort by. Let's sort by title ascending. Sweet. Makes it easy to look through. You can then once more add a filter based on author. So in this case, I have 2 different authors on the site. You can also change things like is not in search as well. We'll reset that. Similar to before, there is also some default options shown. So in this case, we have a draft section and we have trash, giving you an easy look at some obvious things that you might want to look at. But again, you can imagine in the future with workflows, having a custom filter maybe for add filter, status, pending review, and then maybe add filter for pending review for me. So maybe we'll do admin. So you can imagine in the future setting this, being able to save this custom view and having it accessible here, having it as the default experience. So this is, again, not what's coming to 6.5 necessarily, but just a glimpse about how what is landing in 6.5 will impact and guide phase 3 development. So we'll go back out here and we'll return to templates, manage all templates. Just so we can I'm going to show you my favorite view, where we just have grid. This is kind of where I've started messing around with things. Never really want the descriptions. I like to just have a couple of them. And I like to sort by ascending, which is already doing. You might wonder why this is just available in the site editor. And this is intentional because it allows for iteration and exploration before considering how best to expand to other parts of the WordPress experience. This includes the site editor itself. For example, let's say we'll go to styles and we'll open up revisions. You can imagine revisions might need, if they get really cumbersome, they might need their own data views where you could filter by different things and filter by different changes. Same with the font library. That's another great example where we might want to see the font library adopt this kind of filter. So there's lots to consider and lots to come. I hope you enjoyed this early look. Happy WordPressing.
With the data views feature acting as a foundational step towards the ambitious WPM and redesign, I'm eager to hear your perspectives on how this evolution will serve the diverse WordPress community. Fabian, what's your perspective on this?
I'm super excited about what this foundation will mean for us in the future. Today, I'm excited for it to exist and already be out there for users that are in the site editor, kind of for admins to experience these new experiences already today, because they already today offer a lot of great improvement for how you can see your content, how you can manage that. But I'm actually much more excited about the groundwork that this is laying for the future of what we can do, because at this point today, this is not super extensible. This is in the site editor so that it's there, that we can experiment with it. But going forward, if we can imagine WooCommerce fully embracing this, for example, where you have kind of all your information in these more rich previews, in these more rich data views, I think that is going to be a really, really impactful step. And it's one of the coolest features in that whole system is there is a list view, for example, where you can save your own custom lists, where you can save your own custom filtered views. So you could, for example, filter by author on publish dates and in this specific category, and save that filter so that you can always kind of jump to that specific list. And that is something that I think will make a big difference for anybody using WordPress in the future.
Nick, as someone deeply involved in the WordPress ecosystem, how do you envision the redesign enhancing the experience for builders and extenders?
Yeah, as Fabian and the demo that Anne prepared mentioned, it's not really extensible yet in 6.5, but again, it sets the foundation for the future. I think a lot, I started out as a plugin developer, so I think a lot about how a plugin developer might use this functionality. And if you think about the plugin ecosystem, every major plugin has their own like settings page and ways of managing data. And something that's I'm really passionate about is trying to create unified experiences for users. And when you're using all these different data views that plugins have implemented and different settings pages, it kind of creates this like kind of bit of confusing experience within WordPress. So I'm really looking forward to this data views project, providing developers with tools so they don't have to go build their own experiences. They can just tap into what's provided by core and create this really nice unified experience for users. And I think we'll get there. And I think that the way that the data views project is being built, it requires a lot of testing. So if you haven't tested it yet, give it a try and help shape where it's going in the future. Because I would imagine once we look towards 6.5, 6.6, we're going to start seeing a lot more extensibility, and we're going to start seeing how different plugins like WooCommerce, as Fabian mentioned, start integrating into this new feature.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a great baseline and simple standards for lots of developers to work off of in the admin. So thank you. Next up, Fabian will walk us through the block bindings API with a quick demo, highlighting how it's set to enhance our development toolkit in WordPress 6.5. Let's take a look.
I want to show you a really cool new feature in WordPress 6.5 that is called the block bindings API. The block bindings API essentially allows us to bridge the gap between custom metadata, or any kind of dynamic data for that matter, and blocks. And it is a really powerful tool that in the future is going to allow us to write a lot less custom blocks, because we can actually just connect our custom data, whatever that data is, with any core blocks. In WordPress 6.5, this version is very limited. It only ships with support for 4 blocks and a couple of attributes within those blocks, and it has no specific UI for it. I'll actually just jump in and show you what it can do. Right here, I have a WordPress site that is using a query block to display a couple posts from a people custom post type. And all of these people, if I actually go and take a quick look at those, the people have some custom fields added to them. So for one, I'm storing a birthday, and secondly, I'm just storing a location. Just 2 custom post meta fields. If I now go back to this about page, you'll see that I'm just pulling the title, the featured image, and then I have just a regular paragraph block. But as you can see, this is highlighted in purple and it has this connection icon. And that is all the UI there is in WordPress 6.5. There is no UI for me to connect or select a custom attribute, custom data binding, or any of that. That is all for a future release. This release really focuses on just the foundations and is kind of the early exploration of what this can allow us to do. So I'll actually show you in a minute how we can set this up. But what does this actually look like on the front end? If I take a look at this post, you can see it pulls in a location and it pulls in the age. In this case of the age, it's actually a computed value. It's not just the literal date that I showed you a second ago, but it is a computed thing. And I'll show you how this works, because one of them is the core kind of post meta binding that literally just pulled in that raw value, and the other is a custom binding that you can create as a developer, which allows you to do a lot more cool things. So how do I actually set this up? In this post, if I actually switch to the code view to show you how this is set up, and quickly search for my paragraph block here, you can see I have my paragraph block, and in the attributes of this paragraph, there's a new section that is the metadata bindings right here. So we have a metadata object, which contains a bindings object that then tells me the content attribute of the paragraph block should be bound to this source, which is in the first case, this core post meta binding source. And I'm passing it an argument, which in this case has the key location. And that tells it, hey, if you're looking at that post, take this location post meta field and output it. So that's what's happening here. For the second paragraph, if we actually take a look at this, you can see this again has some metadata, some bindings. Again, we're binding the content field, but in this case, we're binding it to this demo person age, and we're not passing it any arguments. And as you can remember, we have our birthday and we just pass it a literal date. And then on the front end, we see the computed age as of today. And the way this works is if I switch over to my code editor here, I have this there's this new register block binding function. And this function accepts, first of all, the name of the binding. And then we can pass it some properties. We can pass it a label, and we can pass it a callback, kind of that get value callback. And this callback receives kind of the source argument. It receives an instance of the block, which in this case, we don't need any of those. And it gives me the name of the attribute that it's bound to. But in this case, all I want to do is I want to kind of get some post meta. I want to get that birthday. And then I'm doing a quick date diff, and then I'm returning the age. And this is all I need to do here to then actually have a computed value of the date. And if you can see how simple this is to set up, you can imagine all kinds of things, because in this callback, you just have the power of PHP. You can do whatever you want. You can do theoretically custom API calls to get dynamic data. You can compute any value. You can get access to any information about the post and output it. And that is really the power of this block bindings API. As I said before, in WordPress 6.5, it is limited to only the content attribute of the heading or paragraph block. It also supports the button block where you can bind the URL and the text content, for example, and the image block where you can bind the image URL and the image alt text. In the future, this will be extended for more core blocks and also custom blocks to support the bindings API. But as of WordPress 6.5, that is the scope of the feature.
That was an insightful demo on the block bindings API. Nick, how do you think this API could shift the landscape for WordPress developers?
I think it's very exciting because it's going to let us write less blocks. And that seems kind of strange. We always want people to be building blocks and experimenting with different ways to build blocks. But if you think about it, like you can bind custom data to, say, a paragraph or heading block. So imagine like you're building you need a custom block that displays like a customer name or something like that. In the past, you would write a custom block for that. But now you could bind that data to a paragraph or a heading. And so I think it's really exciting about like the ease at which you can incorporate custom data into already existing core blocks without having to write your own. So I think it's going to unlock quite a bit. And right now this is just the beginning. There's only a handful of attributes that are currently supported. So expect a lot more in future iterations.
Yeah, Fabian, can you share more about the thought process behind its design and how it might streamline development workflows, the block bindings?
Yeah, I think really the idea behind all of this is to allow you to differentiate, again, a little more between the visual side of things and the content of something. And this is all that you're doing with the block bindings API. You're mapping a specific attribute of a block to a custom data source. And this data source is still getting registered in PHP here and has an API that should be much more familiar to traditional WordPress developers that have built themes for the last 20 years and plugins. And this now allows you to kind of bridge those two worlds. And that is what I'm really excited for. And I don't think it'll fully replace custom blocks, but it replaces those blocks that never really needed to be blocks in the first place. And so I think that is why I'm excited about the API.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, considering what should make up a block is, a critical point, definitely. Great to hear your perspectives. Another exciting feature in WordPress 6.5 is the publicly available interactivity API, part of an overall interactions feature set. Let's check out a preview of the interactivity API. The interactivity API started as an experimental plugin in early 2022 and debuted in several blocks as part of WordPress 6.4, including the navigation, search, query, and file blocks. It was also a critical piece for the Lightbox introduced in 6.4. In WordPress 6.5, it will be publicly available and already has extensive documentation on developer.wordpress.org. The interactivity API is exciting because it provides a standard way for developers to add interactions to their blocks. Developers can use declarative code to define interactions, listen for changes in data, and update relevant parts of the DOM as needed. The interactivity relies on inserting directives in your HTML markup, which ties listeners and state changes between critical components. All of this and with a performance-first approach behind it, which utilizes the new APIs for ES modules to only serve the JavaScript that is being used by the block. Let's check out an example. Here I have a demo site I set up, and if we click into a single post and scroll down, here I've created a custom feedback block, which would allow the user to select a sentiment or emoji of how they think the post is and provide their feedback. So I'm going to select this and say, great post. And when we hit send, it sends an email to the admin email address associated in WordPress. And since I'm on local, I can hop on over to the tool that local provides called MailHog and see, this is a great tool for debugging our email. So we can click in and see that the email was received with the feedback of great post. The user's sentiment was love it for the post title shadow components, which it links back to the original post. So there's a bit of interactivity here. We're allowing this to toggle the form open and closed, and we're also submitting our form with the use of JavaScript. So how would you get started creating an interactivity block? If we hop over here to the docs on developer.wordpress.org, it'll actually step you through setting up and creating your first block. It gives you the scaffolding for an interactive block and how to generate the build. It also goes into the details of key directives that you'll need to get your component hooked up for interactivity. So let's take a peek at our feedback block. Hop over to VS Code, and I'm going to go back to this is our plugin that we actually created with the create block package and from the documentation. And it just has a typical WordPress plugin header. And then we're just registering our block. And if we go into the block.json, this is the definition for our block. One of the new entries in the block.json is this view script module. And this is what points to the view.js, which we'll use for our client-side interactivity. So this is communicating with our template. So if we come into our template, this is where all of our markup exists. And we have a little bit of state that we're doing on the server side to set things up for the initialization of our block. I'm going to collapse that. And then we also pass down some other items we set up here. This is our options that we use, love it. And we have a SVG icon associated with each of these. It is okay, love it, not great, and hate it. And just collapse that. And this is the critical part that sets our component up to use the interactivity API. And this is where these directives come into play. You'll see a similar naming convention. They all start with a data-WP. We're giving it a namespace, and we're using this new handy function to pass in our initial state. And then the rest is really typical markup. We're just looping through some buttons and adding some on-click handlers. And we have our form down at the bottom here with a submit button. And then if we hop over to our Vue.js, and this is where we pull in the WordPress interactivity package. And this gives us some handy functions to work with, helper functions, so we can get context and get our elements. And here is our callbacks that we're using for our actions. Really, we're mostly using this to toggle Boolean. So, show and hide the form. And then the submit form is where we handle the submission of the form. And we use a fetch here. And we use a Ajax URL to post our form information. And if we hop back to the plugin here, this is where we handle and accept the form information and do a security check on the nonce and trigger the email if everything is successful. And then one other handy feature is now that we have our block all created, in WordPress 6.4, there was the concept of block hooks, which was introduced. And so we're actually using a block hook, and we're saying after it on a single post, that's where we want to display our feedback block. I think we're going to see a lot more exciting use cases for Interactivity API. Another great post from Nick Diego on the developer blog is on creating mega menus with the Interactivity API and integrating with a navigation block. I highly recommend checking that out. And there's the original demo prototype that the team put out on wpmovies.dev as a great demonstration of what you can do with the Interactivity API. The code base is also linked from the bottom. I highly recommend you check that out. I can't wait to see what you build with the Interactivity API. The Interactivity API will establish some new capabilities for custom blocks. Have you folks seen some clever use cases?
Well, I can share one that I think has been pretty exciting. I want to start off by saying I am not a strong JavaScript developer. And so building front-end interactions using JavaScript has been a bit of a challenge for me in the past. So the interactivity API provides a framework to add interactions. And yes, you need to learn the interactivity API and learn about the store and directives and that sort of thing. But once you get over that hurdle, you can start creating cool interactions very quickly. So I recently built a mega menu block that uses the interactivity API to open and close the mega menu. A fairly straightforward and simple interaction, but one that I kind of would have struggled with before. But now I have a framework where I can just plug in my directives and set up my store, and everything kind of works. So I think it's going to be a really good tool for folks to start building interactions for front-end block development very quickly.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why it is so exciting to have this interactivity API in WordPress core is that, yes, in theory, you could have achieved most, not all the things, but most of the things that you can do with the interactivity API in custom development today. If you included either custom vanilla JavaScript or if you included another kind of front-end library. But the problem is when you bundle your own front-end library, if you bundle React or something else, first of all, every single plugin needs to bundle their own version because there is no version in core that you can just reuse. So we very quickly get bloated experiences on the front end. And then also that front-end JavaScript only runs in the client. So we have those issues with search engine optimization. Kind of one of the issues that we're trying to solve for is that whilst the script is still loading, whilst the script is still executing, or if the browser fails at loading something, there is a non-interactive version that isn't fully hydrated yet, that isn't really working. And all of those things go away with the interactivity API because it's bundled in core. If all of the different plugins use interactivity API, it only gets loaded once, not 10 times. And also it does get processed on the server also. So all of those things get server rendered for you, which is a huge performance improvement. And then as far as kind of actual developer kind of speed, developer efficiency, working in this kind of, when you write traditional vanilla JavaScript, it's an imperative way of writing code. You kind of have to describe to the application in your code, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, this kind of all of these steps. And with the interactivity API, it is a framework that allows you to write declarative code. So you just tell the application, hey, this is what it should look like, and then you just change that state and all the stuff updates automatically for you. And so it's a great kind of, great performance boost for both the front end of your site and your development team because just speeds up development.
Definitely. And performance is definitely one of the elements that got a lot of refinement in the upcoming 6.5 release. I know that there's a lot of metrics out there about the typing speed, even in the editor, has been increased dramatically. So lots of stuff to look forward to in 6.5. Thank you both for joining us, and big thanks to Anne, Nick, and Fabian. See you later. That's all you have.